Welcome to r/MaliciousCompliance, where we share stories of people conforming to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. Thank you, friends, for subscribing to the channel and for so many likes. The first story. Client for my video production company wanted me to cut the food budget for my crew. The second story. Company says a day starts at 8:30 p.m. the night before and only looks at start times. Have fun paying me for 22 hours of double time. The third story. I started work from 2 to 5 hours late on the Mondays and finished 90 minutes early on the Friday. On to the first story. Don't want my crew to eat well? Fine, I'll make you pay even more so they can eat like royalty the whole week. I own a small video production company. There's one simple rule to keep morale high on set. Feed your people well. We had a fairly big project coming up. Instead of the usual 3 to 4 crew members, it was going to take 17 crew members. We submitted an itemized budget to our client for them to review. We usually allot $15 for breakfast, $20 for lunch, and $30 for dinner. I know that may seem high, but sometimes these shooting days can consistently run for 10 to 12 plus hours. It's incredibly important to keep people fed to keep crew morale high throughout the shoot. Meals are short but planned events in the schedule, not unpaid breaks, and if all you have to look forward to is SH sandwiches during a long and demanding shift, the collective efficiency begins to fall by day 2. I've worked on many sets like that, including ones with no meals, and it sucks. I never want to do that to any of my crew members. Good food is the least you can do. So we send the budget to the client, and hell breaks loose on a couple of levels. They decide they want something a little more for the set, but they also don't want to have to hire more crew or shoot for more days, as that would balloon the cost. It was still within the scope of what we could do, and it was an exciting project. The problem was that they wanted to help offset the potential cost of the extra art direction by reducing the rate for the crew and the meal costs. I've already offered the crew these positions for the day rates they requested, and I'm not budging on that. I don't want cheap, I want good, and if they want cheap but not good, then they can go somewhere else. Over an 8-day shoot, the total for $65 per person per day was almost $9K total. They wanted to reduce it to $4K. Get the F out. You're talking bare minimum for that many people. I called the client and explained that it was very important to not take away from that part of the budget, but they won't budge. I don't even spend that much for food on vacation. Okay, well this isn't a vacation, and you're not the one working a physically and mentally demanding 12-hour shift every day for over a week in a different city. Then I have a devious idea. The film industry has lots of jargon that doesn't always make sense at face value. Things like stinger means an extension cord, a C-47 is a clothespin, and a Texas apple box means a specially made wooden box laid down on its largest side. So I comply maliciously by saying, okay, so as I've said, it's very important to keep the meal budget as it is, but I think I can get it down to $6,000 or so. They eventually agree to it. Thank you. Then on a completely unrelated note, of course, I talk about the art direction. Now, unfortunately, it still may cost a little more than before, because with the new style, the art department is going to need the craft services budget increased from $3K to $6.5K. I know it's not cheap, but they'll be able to make exactly what you're looking for. That kind of style is in very high demand, so those materials are pretty expensive to get. Also, the shipping for the extra craft services supplies are going to cost a few hundred. Also, the extra construction for craft services will cost a few hundred. We chat about options, but they accepted. They're paying more, but they still save money and got what they want. Here's the thing though, craft services has nothing to do with the art department. That's the snacks and drinks available on set throughout the day, and the people who prepare them. The art department did need that budget increase because of the smaller meal budget. Just so happens that all the other departments did too. The style they were asking for was in high demand, but didn't actually cost that much more. Craft services ended up equipped with breakfast sandwiches, donuts, coffee, protein bars, fruit, and many other snacks for breakfast. Various forms of catering from local pizza, Italian, Mexican, and Americana restaurants for lunch that happen to appear at craft services for serving. Desserts, expensive charcuterie boards, deluxe trail mixes, veggie platters, and lots of sparkling waters, bottled Starbucks, lemonades, and about a dozen other kinds of drinks throughout the day, in nearly unlimited supply. I can't list everything, but it was much more than we usually supplied, including full meals. I let the crew know the situation, and that breakfast and lunch would be served at a craft services with appropriate break times. Then I let them know that the limit for dinner each night would now be $50, and would be after we wrapped each day. Oh hell yes. Some days, some people were tired and just wanted to go to sleep after the shoot. No problem, your meal budget rolls over indefinitely. By the time the shoot was finished, we had been to many of the nicer restaurants in the area. By the final night, it was a blowout. Almost everyone had a decent budget rolled over due to the occasional fast food dinner. The average bill with fancy drinks, appetizers, and to-go orders included was well over $100 per person. My company still profited plenty, and all of those crew members are still happy and even prioritizing working on our projects. Being well-fed and well-paid on a set is the kind of thing that's not forgotten in this industry. It's not a waste, it's an investment. The second story is swing shift scheduling shenanigans. While reading other stories, I'm suddenly reminded of my own, so here's my contribution. About 10 years ago, I worked as a press operator for a company we'll call WSPG, because those are the actual initials. Screw them. Some backstory. When hired on, you're told that there's occasional weekend work that's typically voluntary. Maybe in the 80s, but ever since the mid-90s, you're working your 40+ every third weekend at a minimum. The policy stated that without adequate volunteers, you'd have to cover every third weekend, with the other 2 weekends being free. There was also a place for low OT, start of year-to-date overtime hours accrued, and low seniority coverage of weekends when they were really short. Nobody had a designated home machine. We all floated from machine to machine with the intent of keep fresh on everything, but with the reality of sticking the best operators on the most technically difficult operations, regardless of which machine it was on. This resulted in a lot of the time getting a crash course for 4 hours on Friday, so that you could keep things going on Saturday and Sunday with mixed results. As busy seasons picked up, it wasn't unheard of to work 48 to 60 hours on Monday through Friday for several months at a time, while also working 8 hours a day on 1 out of 3 Sundays and 2 out of 3 Saturdays. Nice checks but miserable workers, which led to people calling in just to get a day off, which led to more OT and a vicious cycle started. They'd recently started up a swing shift to get 24/7 coverage on a new press, because the cross-training wasn't coming along very well, and they needed a long-term solution to the poor workmanship and shoddy attendance. I volunteered because the incentive seemed amazing at the time. With a constantly changing schedule as vacation coverage and customer demand waxed and waned, the swing shift was a set yearly calendar. Only work your scheduled days, full stop. No vacation coverage. No extra hours for business needs. You're already scheduled off for half the year, and taking vacation means you're always working less than half a year. Dream come true. The actual weekly schedule was a weird homebrew by a middle manager to minimize weekly OT and to try not to pay any double time for Sundays. The rule for Sunday was you only made double time if you worked the previous 6 days and had 48 hours in before your shift started. Holidays were a different animal though, as those were always paid at a double time rate for hours worked during the holiday, plus 8 hours of holiday pay. Our story occurs around one such holiday. I was scheduled to work on Independence Day, America, and also the Sunday in the same week. So I volunteered for shifts here and there on my days off to load up on OT and guarantee a healthy amount of double time, as I had to hit all 7 days worked. When payday came around, my check looked light, so I looked into it. I was working 7 p.m. the night before July 4th until 7 a.m. the morning of July 4th. What's considered by everybody there to be a July 4th shift, as most of the hours fall on July 4th. Payroll saw it otherwise, though. After much back and forth, I found out that our clocking system just looks at a punch-in time to declare the date of the shift. A little experimentation and I found out the cutoff was set at a strangely arbitrary time of 8:30 p.m. If you punch in before 8:30 p.m., it's considered a shift during that day. Anything after is considered a shift for the next day. Cue malicious compliance. I was also scheduled for another holiday later the same year, New Year's Eve. I was supposed to work 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. December 30th to 31st. I called ahead and said I was having some issues at home, and I'd be a little late for my December 30th shift, but it shouldn't be more than an hour or two. I rolled in at 9 p.m., punched in, and got right to work. Missing less than 4 hours of your shift was also only half an occurrence. I punched out at 7 a.m. like normal, got some sleep, and came back in at 7 p.m. for my holiday shift. Except the payroll system tracked both shifts to the same day. So rather than working 24 hours across 2 days and getting paid for 36 hours, I worked 22 hours and got paid for 44 hours. My coworkers were a little miffed at how I gamed the system, as I worked less than them but got paid for an additional 8 hours. But payroll was done at the corporate level, and in my eyes, I was just paying myself back for the hours they screwed me out of earlier in the year. I'd like to say it ended there, but there were several other times throughout the next 6 months where I was accidentally late, and ended up making more because of it. That place was a nest of vipers though. No regrets for trying to get what I could out of them. The last story is travel down on the Monday. Okay, if you wish. A few years ago, I was given some plum shifts helping out at a supermarket clothing section. the staff for which were provided by the same merchandising company I worked for. It was day shifts a good few hours away from home, so I asked if I could have my hotel starting from the Sunday night in order to be there for 7 a.m. as requested. Now, this was a normal request for day shifts, especially for those who primarily use public transport like I do. Getting to somewhere for 7 a.m. by train just isn't doable for most places. However, on this occasion, it was denied. And I was only given a hotel from Monday to Friday. Just get there as early as you can was the instruction. So I looked at the train schedules, and it wasn't as bad as I feared. I could catch a 6:05 London-bound train due into Loughborough at 6:25, then a 6:30 train straight to Norwich. The only time of the day that such a combination was possible, as the Norwich trains only stopped at Loughborough that one time each day. This would get me there for about 9 a.m. I relayed this to the office, and they were fine with this. The next available route also started at 6:05, but longer connections at Leicester and Ely instead added over an hour to the journey total. Unfortunately, British rail companies have a reputation regarding reliability and punctuality, or rather the lack thereof, and with only a 5-minute interchange between trains, even a minor delay between Sheffield, the start point of the London route, and Loughborough could lead to disaster. The first week I just barely made it off the slam-door London train and across the platform to the Norwich one. I was literally pulling my case in as the platform manager blew his whistle. I told the office that this level of delay was normal for this route, as they expected to be able to make the time up between Leicester and St. Pancras. It's fine, do what you can. The next week I missed the Loughborough connection. It was just pulling out as the doors unlocked on the London train. I had to take the longer route. The third week there was no delay on the 6:05 at all. The fourth week, oh boy, not only did I miss the connection at Loughborough, but the Stansted-bound train I was meant to catch to Ely instead was cancelled due to lack of drivers. As this train was supposedly hourly, it was a long wait for the next one. And while it would have been quicker to catch the next train into London, find my way to the correct station, Liverpool Street, and catch a Greater Anglia train to Norwich, I'd bought the cheaper ticket that was not valid through London, so that was a no-go, and that clause was important later on. Even after this debacle, where I turned up at lunchtime, I was still getting told to travel down on the Monday morning. My unreliability was acceptable because it wasn't my fault. Now, my shifts were supposedly 7 to 1900. I was being given merchandising length shifts, as I was employed as a merchandiser, not a clothing section employee. So I was meant to finish at 7 p.m. on a Friday with a 15-minute walk to the station after that. The train I caught on the Monday morning ordinarily went through Nottingham, from whence I could catch another train back to my home station. However, the last one of these departed at about 1900. Too early for me to catch if I finished at 7 p.m. It was also the last train of the night, and any delays would have seen me missing the last connection home. See my previous point about reliability and punctuality. There were later trains, but they went through London and so I couldn't use them. This was deemed by the local staff, who I was there to support, as unacceptable. Catching the last train home, risking my connection, and getting back rather close to midnight even if I made it. Nuh-uh, not happening. And they raised this with the area manager, whose response was, catch whichever train works for you. Oh, is that so? Well, in that case, I'll catch the second to last one just after 1800. And I'll leave at about 17:30 to ensure I make it to the station on time, able to position myself to be one of the first ones on so I don't have to turf a chancer out of my reserved seat. This state of affairs carried on for about 2 months, until they managed to find a local to fill the vacancy. And while I could have bought the more expensive London ticket, well, the cheap ticket was £90, and I had to buy it myself and claim it back on expenses. Don't forget to subscribe and have a nice day.